Man, this guy has terrible luck. Yeah, I just got done with the first 2 episodes of the Dungeon of Black Company, and these are my first impressions on the series so far. The Dungeon of Black Company opens up with a guy named Ninomiya, and he's in the modern times. He's successful. He's essentially figured out what he can do in order to make enough money to get to the point where he no longer has to work. He's got basically interest kind of pouring back into him from his investments. He's got multiple apartment buildings, so he's just set. He's looking down from his huge skyscraper. He's looking down upon all the office workers that have to go into work every day, and he's just laughing about the fact that he's no longer this thing in a cog. He's no longer a cog in the system. He's got it made, and now he can be a NEET for the rest of his life. He's the perfect NEET, basically. And wouldn't you know it, while he's celebrating, he ends up getting transported into another world. And in this new world, it kind of talks about the fact that, heroes used to go out into dungeons and clear all the dungeons and take all the monsters. And at some point, they've discovered this resource that is powering everything. And so now there's these companies that will essentially go down there and just mine tons of this ore. And he is basically pulled into being one of these employees to work in these mines. But he doesn't let that keep him down. He's still determined that he is going to rise up to the point where he can relax and have it made again. So even still, as he is working in these mines, he's kind of slowly figuring out some way that he can work the system in order to benefit himself and get himself out of the working force once again. And in the first scenario, we essentially have him discover where there's this portal that takes him to this 3rd floor, and he kind of takes one of this other guy that's kind of being bullied off the side and pulls him into his little kind of scheme to go down into this dungeon, find this ore. He's already kind of traced it out and found it. It's completely empty. Get this ore, bring it back, and then make a bunch of money. But when you know it, when he finally discovers this trick in order to make money, he ends up running into a terribly powerful beast. And in order to survive, he basically makes a deal with this beast and says, look, if you don't eat us, I can make sure that I will give you all the food that you want, so many things that are super tasty. And sure enough, this monster's like, okay, sure, let's do that. And now all the profits he's making is going into the belly of this monster in order to keep himself from being eaten alive, basically. And this idea kind of continues as he kind of figures out some way in order to twist things around to make himself no longer have to work and for others to work for him, or some easy, quick money scheme. Always ends up kind of blowing up in his face. And that kind of continues on into the end of the 2nd episode, as we kind of finally get this point in which he realizes he has allies now, and that he can finally, possibly, make this black company that he so desires to make that will, essentially make it to where he no longer has to work. But we'll see. We'll see if this turns out or if it doesn't blow up in his face again in the 3rd episode. But yeah, I would honestly say this is definitely a refreshing setup for an isekai. Honestly, I can see tons and tons of isekais every single season. We're at like 15 this season, and they're always kind of in some type of elements. And granted, this can kind of be pushed into the category of a Build a Nation type of isekai, but it has a different twist to it because it's technically him building a company. And that's something a little bit different. It's not just kind of building a nation and you have all these different things about it. It's more about how do I make a bunch of money for myself and kind of slip in there the idea of dungeons, or the idea of adventuring in a dungeon, pulling resources from a particular location. And I think that's where this technically is getting its unique feel from. And so far, I'm actually loving it. Now, granted, I kind of pull back a little bit every now and then when I realize, man, this guy's a dirtbag. He's not a good person. I kind of feel uncomfortable with what he's doing. But it's always kind of to a punchline. If he's ever doing something that's incredibly mean, and like you'll see with the 2nd scenario where he's essentially using this staff it can mind control, and he's using that to push people to almost the brink of their life. And what do you know, it blows up in his face and he gets the crap beat out of him. So it does seem like whenever it does get like super, sinister, it does blow up in his face, and he always gets some kind of repercussions to it. So, but even still, it's got that kind of element there for a dark comedy's sake. It's not like super dark comedy, but it's pretty close to that, laughing about the idea of him pushing people to do terrible things, him doing a terrible thing, and that being comical. So you do have that element to it. And I think his personality definitely does shine with this series. I think he's a a great main character to really fit this bill. He does have that diabolicalness to him. He definitely reminds me of number 6 from Combatants Will Be Dispatched. He's kind of got that kind of personality to him. He almost feels exactly like the same character, just in a different setting. Maybe he is actually number 6 and we just don't know it yet. I like the supporting characters so far. Wanabe, who is this lizard guy, is definitely kind of the equalizer to his sinisterness. He always kind of comes in and says, this is kind of really bad. We shouldn't really be doing this. We have like the overly gluttonous Rimu, who is this monster that he kind of talks into feeding in order to keep her subsided. I'm sure Chris is loving this character because she is the same Seiyu as Tama, which he always loves. And now we've added this queen ant lady, which I'm sure is going to be a hoot going forward as well. So it was kind of funny though, because it definitely kind of plays off of some of the RPG jokes. It's not living in those jokes. I think I mentioned here recently in one of our podcasts that I'm kind of getting tired of the RPG jokes, the skill ups, the dungeon and stuff like that. But it does have some here and there. Like, it does explain he ends up becoming a part of this one group that their sole task is to go into dungeons, clean up after the heroes, and restock the chests with supplies for the next dungeon goer that ends up going down there. It's almost like replenishing the dungeon so that it can be a dungeon again. So that was a little bit of a chuckle from me. It's got some pretty good animation to it as well, and the art style kind of fades into it as well. It has very strong lines to it. Almost a unique art style to it that I actually really do enjoy. Now, I will say they had in the later parts of the second episode this whole segment where they were ants and they were talking to other ants. And it seemed like since they were using CGI, they decided to make them like stupid, overly animated. And it was kind of distracting, honestly. And I did honestly think the whole segment with him talking the ants into essentially overthrowing their queen, I felt like that dragged out a little too long. I honestly, at some points, actually said out loud, all right, please move on already. This is kind of getting drug out. We get it. He's talking these ants into overthrowing the king or queen. I don't need to have this long discussion between you and the ant. But other than that, I really love the series so far. And I think it's got a lot of promise to it. I'm looking forward to the coming episodes and seeing what crazy stuff he ends up doing in order to basically reestablish his life as the ultimate NEET. But if you guys like my impressions of this series so far, definitely leave a like down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of the series, or if you're going to be checking it out. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if you can. It does definitely support us. And I do thank you all for watching, and y'all take care.